At noon on August 15, 1945, Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki sat inside his quarters at the 5th Air Fleet headquarters in Kyushu, listening in silence as Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender. The war was over. Japan had lost. Ugaki opened his diary, the Sensuikan Nikki, a journal he had kept since October 1941, filling 731 pages with operational analysis, personal reflections, and a day-by-day account of the Pacific War, from his time as Chief of Staff under Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto to his later commands of battleships and air fleets. But this final entry was different. It would be the last words he ever wrote as a serving officer of the Imperial Japanese Navy. He admitted he had not yet received an official ceasefire order, blamed himself for the failure of Japan's aviators to stop the American advance, and wrote that he would fly one final mission to demonstrate the true spirit of Bushido. What he didn't explicitly write, but what haunted hundreds of earlier pages, was a realization that had been growing since Midway. Japan could not win this war, not for lack of bravery or tactics, but because American industry made victory mathematically impossible. His first true glimpse of this came on June 8, 1942, 3 days after Midway, where 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, were lost along with 248 aircraft and over 3,000 irreplaceable crewmen. Ugaki, who had helped Yamamoto plan the operation, wrote that June 5th was the greatest failure of my life, but at the time still believed the loss was temporary. That changed when intelligence reports revealed unbelievable American production. Escort carriers being built in 3 weeks, fleet carriers rising from shipyards across the country, cruiser and destroyer construction accelerating at a rate Japan could not match. If those numbers were real, and they were, Japan's entire strategic position was doomed. Ugaki's understanding deepened in June 1944 with the sinking of the Taiho during the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Taiho, Japan's newest and most advanced carrier, lasted only 3 months before a single submarine-launched torpedo triggered fuel vapor explosions that destroyed her. That same day, Shokaku was sunk, and Japan lost 3 more carriers before the battle ended. America, by contrast, entered the fight with 15 carriers and lost none. Ugaki wrote about the losses, the dead pilots, and the sense of facing a fleet that grew larger every time they met it. Meanwhile, the United States launched the Essex-class carriers at a staggering pace. 17 completed by the end of 1944, while Japan managed to build only 6 carriers in 3 years. Even worse were the Casablanca-class escort carriers, 50 built in less than 2 years, each in an average of 3 months. Japan was being erased by arithmetic. At the Battle of Leyte Gulf, in October 1944, Ugaki stood aboard Yamato as her sister ship Musashi was overwhelmed by waves of American aircraft, hit by 19 torpedoes and 17 bombs before she finally sank. If Musashi could be sunk, any ship could be sunk. Japan lost 4 carriers, 3 battleships, 10 cruisers, and 11 destroyers in that battle alone, the largest naval battle in history. The Americans lost 1 light carrier and a handful of escorts. After Leyte, the Imperial Navy ceased to exist as an offensive force. Fuel shortages, the loss of carriers, and a destroyed pilot corps left Japan unable to contest American operations. Battleships no longer mattered. Carriers ruled the Pacific, and Japan had none left. By early 1945, as commander of the 5th Air Fleet, Ugaki oversaw mostly land-based aircraft, many destined for kamikaze attacks, not because they were strategically sound, but because Japan had nothing else. Operation Kikusui sent hundreds of kamikaze pilots against the American fleet off Okinawa. They inflicted damage, but not one capital ship was sunk. The American fleet was simply too large to dent. On April 7, 1945, Yamato sailed on a one-way suicide mission with barely enough fuel for the trip. Detected immediately, she was attacked by hundreds of American carrier aircraft and sunk within hours, killing over 3,000 men, many of whom Ugaki knew personally. By summer, his diary entries became bleak. Burned cities, collapsed factories, starvation, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the Soviet invasion of Manchuria, Japan, had no remaining ability to fight. It had been mathematically defeated years earlier, possibly the moment it opened fire on a nation with 10 times its industrial capacity. After hearing the Emperor's surrender broadcast on August 15th, Ugaki decided he would not surrender. He would die in a final kamikaze attack. His staff protested. Friends pleaded. Vice Admiral Takajiro Onishi tried to stop him. But Ugaki refused. He removed his rank insignia, took only the ceremonial sword gifted to him by Yamamoto, and boarded a Yokosuka D-4Y Judy dive bomber. The aircraft carried 3 men instead of 2. 10 other planes followed him, the last kamikaze attack of World War II. At 19:24 hours, Warrant Officer Endo sent Ugaki's final message. They had begun their dive on an American ship. No American vessel recorded being hit. Ugaki's plane likely crashed into the sea or was shot down. 3 aircraft returned to base. His was not among them. His body was never recovered. After the war, analysts discovered the full scale of American industrial power. 9,000 war vessels built to Japan's 670. 151 carriers to Japan's 25. 297,000 aircraft to Japan's 76,000. Liberty ships produced every 42 days, with one built in under 5 days. In 1944 alone, American shipyards launched more tonnage than Japan launched from 1939 to 1945. The Pacific War, economists argued, was won before it began. Japan produced 7 million tons of steel a year. America produced over 80 million. Japan depended on stolen oil. America produced 1.4 billion barrels annually. The United States could lose 3 carriers and replace them in 6 months. Japan could lose 1 and never replace it. Yamamoto had predicted this when he warned, "I can run wild for 6 months to a year. After that, I have no confidence." 6 months after Pearl Harbor came Midway, and Japan never again won a major naval battle. Ugaki's diary, recovered by American forces and later published as Fading Victory, revealed how deeply he understood the inevitability of defeat even as he continued sending pilots into battle. His entries shift from optimism to concern, then to grim resignation as he watched American forces grow stronger, while Japan's forces evaporated. His final entry on August 15th was brief. He heard the Emperor, accepted responsibility for defeat, and declared he would lead one last attack. Then he closed the diary and walked to the airfield. There was no final reflection, no closure, just silence, and the abrupt end of a war that had been decided not by courage or tactics, but by the cold mathematics of industrial production.